I don't know if you've covered this, and if you have, I'll just move on to the next question, but did y'all cover the Community Reinvestment Act? But I know that you touch on it in your testimony.
And there was a question from Mr. Davis on exactly this issue.
Well, the question goes really to just how active the banks are today with the mergers and such. I know in San Antonio, we have fewer banks in essence. Community banks hardly compete anymore, and of course with the mergers and such of the banks, is there any attention to being paid to the CRA obligations of the banks? Because we know when they comply, then small businessmen and women definitely benefit. And I don't know if Mr. Davis, basically I asked the same question, you already answered it, and if he did, I can move on. Okay.
Certainly that compliance with the Community Reinvestment Act is something that the Federal Reserve scrutinizes very carefully. It's part of what we're supposed to do to make sure that, in fact, the banks are doing what they're supposed to be doing in these communities. And so part of our supervisory process is to look at banks in this regard and to ensure that they are complying with the Act.
And with the mergers, though, if you have fewer players, how does that impact, if anything?
I think that there are fewer players doesn't change the need for them to comply.
Oh, no, I understand that, but
so
realistically,
you have the bigger players. We have to supervise them similarly to the way if we're looking at smaller players.
Do y'all have any report that's forthcoming? Any recent studies? I know that that Barney Frank in Financial Services was thinking of having a hearing on it. I'm not sure if that's transpired, Madam Chairwoman. You may be more aware of that, but I'm just wondering if y'all are doing anything on it.
I'm not sure, but if we are doing something on this, I'll be more than happy to get back to you on it.
If you would, I would really appreciate that. On free trade agreements, because this came up the other day when we had the ambassador with the trade representative being here. Why is it important to include environmental and labor provisions in there as far as compliance, a regulatory scheme that we want to make sure is imposed on our trading partners?
Well, again, I really don't want to comment on the details of free trade agreements. I have expressed that I'm somebody who believes that the global trade is a positive influence on the American economy. And also, I think, very importantly, a positive influence on economies elsewhere in the world, where there are many poor people in the rest of the world, in fact, benefit by a global economy. And in fact, one of the great things about our history is that the U.S. actually encouraged this global economic system after World War II.
Now, I understand the international implications and good policy, we need to be engaged and so on, but the point I'm always trying to make from a business perspective is we need a level playing field for our domestic men, businessmen, and women. So if we have a regulatory scheme that actually imposes greater cost on the product or service that we actually provide, and they don't, it's a tremendous disadvantage. And a lot of people say, well, you just are into the environment because you're a tree hugger, or you're into labor because you're a pro-labor. Well, you may be. But the other reasons are very practical and very important, and I'm afraid that we just have never really emphasized that part of it. The last question I have is just the cost of energy and the potential economic impact. I mean, we're going to have a $100 barrel of oil, and it hasn't translated yet to the pump, but it's going to, obviously, by Christmas, if not sooner. But look at the small business impact. I mean, they're on the margins all of the time. You know what I mean? They don't absorb. They don't really get to pass on as easily as I think some of the bigger outfits. Are y'all evaluating the rising cost of energy? I'm not just talking about, gasoline, but, natural gas and such. I mean, this is going to be huge this winter.
We do actually look carefully about what's going on in terms of the energy markets and the impact both on businesses and households. So clearly there's an issue of what's the relationship, for example, to what's happening in the oil prices to gasoline prices. What impact does it have on natural gas prices? And these prices actually do have an important impact on the economy, and in fact it's something that we have to monitor in order to think about what's going to happen in the economy in the future. We talked about that we have to forecast in order to do policy well. And indeed, thinking about what the role of energy prices and the higher energy prices that we've experienced lately, has on the economy is, in fact, a key element of what we have to do in thinking about how we conduct policy.
Yeah, it's my concern is the disparate impact that it has on small businesses. That they're just too close to the, as I always say, operating on the margins. So when their operating costs go up, I mean, it really is the end. I'm not sure if the Fed looks at the very distinct position that small business have as opposed in the overall economic picture, and then we can all say, gee, they're the economic engine of the United States and such, but the truth is that we probably don't really look specifically as to what kind of relief are we going to try to provide them to confront and actually survive, because I don't think they survive very long. But again, thank you for your testimony. Now yield back.